Our story begins with a young man named Kim Jeongeum recounting a tale of woe, a series of events that led him to his current predicament. He begins by stating that a man named Kim Sol had forced him into boxing, leading to a period of hellish training. Jeongeum reflects on why he didn't simply quit, acknowledging that saying no wasn't an option. Instead, he chose the path of a slightly better hell. Later, Kim Sol revealed the true reason, that he simply needed a sparring partner because there wasn't anyone in the junior division. Jeongeum finds this ridiculous. Jeongeum then shifts to his current situation at a logistics center, commenting that he finds himself talking to a robot. He observes the lack of warmth and the scarcity of people at the center and realizes that he must have come to the wrong place. He reflects back to his military discharge about 2 months prior. The joy was short-lived. His family moved to a bigger house in Wajongbu, leaving him behind in a studio apartment near the school. His parents, as a gift for his discharge, paid for the deposit and half a year's rent, initiating his forced solitary living. With this newfound freedom, Jeongeum began his job hunt. He had some savings from the military and the government scholarship for multi-child families, so he wasn't in a rush. He had a vision of a pick-colored romance, starting at a cafe, but reality was not as kind. He was rejected for a cafe job because he had no experience, the reality proving to be harsher and colder than he expected. After a month of job hunting, his boredom was extreme. He was bored and considered himself useless. He contacts his sisters and expresses his feelings. They both tell him he was an idiot for moving into a studio apartment so early, and further stated he should have stayed home. They suggest he come to their gym and point out that it was easy to get a job as a delivery driver. They inform him that even delivery companies use AI to make the work easier. They tell him about PX Fulfillment Center, and that many people his age are working there. Jeongeum finds himself at the PX Fulfillment Center. He reflects on the lack of warmth, and the fact his conversation partner is a robot. He never imagined that finding a job would be this easy. He encounters Manager Shin, who is having an issue with the inventory. Manager Shin tells him that PX is indicating there is still tuna in stock, despite the fact that they are out, and asks that he check the warehouse. Jeongeum agrees and begins to search for the tuna. He comments that he feels like the robot PX feels warmer than Manager Shin. Jeongeum locates the tuna on the first floor. He is surprised that it wasn't where it was supposed to be and comments on the issue as he opens the door. However, as he enters, the door slams shut and locks behind him. Jeongeum realizes that he's trapped, and he attempts to call Manager Shin, but is sent to voicemail. He considers calling for help, but decides against it, since it doesn't seem too serious, and doing so would make things awkward with his manager. Jeongeum, still trapped in the warehouse, decided to wait, hoping the door would open soon. He messages his sister, informing her of his predicament. She finds it humorous, jokingly saying he's working for an escape room. Suddenly, a building collapses nearby. Jeongeum's sister calls him, trying to communicate that something is wrong, but the connection is lost. He hears a voice warning of danger, telling everyone to evacuate immediately and take shelter. He realizes something catastrophic is happening outside, feeling scared. He attempts to get someone's attention, yelling for help. He hits the door and screams that there are people inside. He tries to call 119, but the signal is weak. Jeongeum reflects on the dire situation and realizes that if a war is truly happening, then he might be in serious danger. As he is hitting the door, something appears nearby. Jeongeum instantly understands that he needs to remain quiet to survive. A strange entity moves past the door of the warehouse. Jeongeum understands that whatever was outside the door was definitely not human. The entity passes by the door, and he is left there alone. He realizes that he needs to figure out what to do, and he feels panic start to set in. He sits against the wall, attempting to process the situation, and he hears the sounds of destruction still occurring outside. Time passes, and Jeongeum has been trapped in the warehouse for 3 days. He concludes that since no one has come to look for him, something significant must have occurred outside. He begins to write his thoughts, realizing he doesn't have much battery left and that this will be his last note. The alarms have been quiet since yesterday, which is at least allowing him to get some sleep. Suddenly, a pop-up notification appears in front of him, informing him that he awakened an ability, his own subspace, and that he can store any object in front of him. He thinks he lost his mind, but decides to play along anyway and asks the system to store the entire PX fulfillment center. The system confirms his choice, asking if he would like to store the building. After he confirms, the surrounding area shifts into a desolate and destroyed landscape. Jeongeum looks out at the new view in shock. As Jeongeum surveys the destroyed landscape, a notification appears, indicating that storing has started. The system also informs him that an operating system suitable for his system has been found. His head suddenly feels strange as the update progresses. He remembers the loud roar he heard 3 days ago and wonders if it's a gorilla or a bear. Fortunately, it seems to be passing through. Suddenly, he is confronted by a large, monstrous figure, an orc, that is running towards him, screaming. He feels terrified. The orc is coming closer quickly. Another notification appears, stating that synchronization is complete and he can now enter the subspace. The system asks if he would like to enter. Jeongeum, in a panic, agrees. Jeongeum finds himself within the subspace. He notices that the orc is outside, attempting to get in but unable to cross the boundary. He realizes that whatever happened, he is safe. The system clarifies that without permission from Kim Jeongeum, the master of the subspace, no living thing, object, or energy can enter or leave. He acknowledges the system, expressing surprise that it can speak. Jeongeum is shown inside the subspace, and he is in disbelief at what he is seeing. Jeongeum asks if the orcs really can enter. The system confirms, as he gets a notification stating he has completed his first tutorial and receives a mana stone as a reward. He notes the information that he has received and sees the facility info. It tells him the building is 5 stories and approximately 33,000 square meters. The system shows that it has a shipping speed of 60 kilometers per hour, a limit of 1 simultaneous shipment, and a shipping size limit of 2 meters. Jeongeum is given a warning that maintenance is 2 minutes away, and the system explains that he needs to use the mana stone to power the facility. He is informed that the single mana stone he has can power the facility for 24 hours. He asks how this is possible. The system explains that when storing the facility, the energy system was modified to work with mana stones. Jeongeum is doubtful that 1 small stone can power the entire facility. He notes the system seems to have gotten a bit smarter. The system alerts him that the energy supply has been cut off, which would impact Pax Fresh, a delivery system that stores and delivers fresh and frozen foods. Jeongeum realizes that in the current situation, food is the most crucial element for survival. He knows that the power to the freezers and refrigerators storing the food has been cut off. He asks the system if it can maintain the entire facility for 24 hours with 1 mana stone. It confirms. He asks how to obtain more mana stones. The system tells him they can be obtained from beings of another world. Jeongeum contemplates the meaning of beings of another world. He uses the mana stone to maintain the facility. He asks if he can search for items like before, and the system confirms. He begins searching for weapons and locates a camping hand axe, a kitchen knife, and a folding steel knife. He reflects that these items would be hard to use in close quarters. He decides throwing them is his best option, but he is concerned that there's not much stock of these items left. He is also unsure if the blades would penetrate the orc's muscles. He decides that he doesn't have to kill it in one go, and inflicting a serious wound would be sufficient. He convinces himself to try and commits to the fight. He throws the weapons. The weapons make contact, but they don't seem to do significant damage. Jeongeum realizes the knives are too light, and the only thing that might be effective is the axe, but then wonders about throwing heavy objects, like a bowling ball, to target the joints. He asks PX how much of the axes are left in stock, and the system indicates that there are 15. He notes that there were 15 before, and he wonders why they are duplicating. The system explains that items in the subspace are created by converting real objects into information. Therefore, they can be duplicated, and while they can be damaged, they cannot be depleted. Jianjium, realizing that this means infinite stock, decides he can just throw freely. He reflects that he will get tired before killing the monster, and the system tells him that he doesn't have to throw them manually, and he can automatically ship products out of the subspace. It can only ship once every 30 seconds, but that shipping time can be reduced by enhancing the skill. He asks how to do it, and the system explains that if he just thinks of the registered product and says ship, it will be automatically shipped. He says ship, and a knife travels at an incredible speed out of the subspace. Jianjium is shocked at the shipping speed, which the system confirms is 60 kilometers per hour. It tells him it can be increased to 75 kilometers per hour, and any further increase would require enhancing the skill. He asks how to enhance the skill, and the system informs him that he can do so with mana stones. Jianjium realizes he needs to search for items and locates lightweight combat boots, tactical combat pants, a detailed map of Seoul, and 12 color markers. He locates his home on the map and also marks Dabong district with Gyeongbu, Gangnam, and Yeoljiro. He decides that if he goes to the nearest place first, then that would be his order. He acknowledges that he must get to everyone safely, noting it's quite far to walk, but he has a decent means of transportation. He locates and decides on a dual-ton Kodiak Sports electric bicycle. He then states to his loved ones to just hold on a little longer. The youngest is coming soon. The story continues with Jianjium outside the subspace. He has been outside for 30 minutes and has already killed 12 orcs. He reflects on his ability, noting two key things he has learned. First, the shipping ability is overpowered, even with a 30-second cooldown and a limited range. He also realizes that this ability can be upgraded with mana stones. He then thinks about the product retrieval ability, which automatically retrieves dispatched items. He realizes it is as convenient as the shipping ability. He discovers that while normal items like axes don't need to be retrieved, mana stones do. He also realizes that the mana stones are only available after the enemy is dead. He gets a notification stating he has obtained 1 mana stone and now has 13 total. He reflects that he is literally collecting money. He concludes that it's good that he put PX into the subspace. As long as it's maintained, he cannot die inside. Now he needs to get his family into the subspace. As he is moving, he reflects on the second thing he has learned. There are more creatures beyond common sense, not just orcs. He spots a winged creature, larger than an orc, and realizes it's going to be tough to hunt. He hears several cries in the distance. Suddenly, Jianjium hears a human scream. He rushes toward it and sees a man being attacked by the winged creature. He sees that it's Mr. Choi. Mr. Choi is being attacked, and the winged creature seems to be ignoring him. He realizes that the smaller Mr. Choi seems like an easier target. Jianjium knows he needs to do something to distract the creature. He begins to ship a variety of different objects towards the winged creature. Suddenly, the winged creature is killed by an axe that appears out of nowhere. The man is amazed that a wyvern was killed with a single axe throw. He looks over and sees a man on a bicycle. He is astonished that a soldier was able to do that. A survivor thanks Jianjium profusely and believes he is a soldier. He states that Jianjium saved their lives. Jianjium clarifies that he is not a soldier and is actually a PAX FC employee. He also adds that he is aware of abilities. The survivor exclaims that even if he isn't a soldier, he has unusual skills. The man expresses his envy that Jianjium has an ability, and he does not, though. He states his is just a humble driver ability. He also says they are fortunate to have found help around this area. He confirms that he understands abilities. He then thanks Jianjium again. The survivor asks if there are other people nearby. He explains that this area, Block C, had a lot of people due to the logistics center, but most have been killed. He states that there might be 10 to 15 survivors left, isolated in the Block E underground terminal, and that they were also there searching for a road vehicles could use before the building disappeared. He offers Jeonjim to join them on the 4th basement floor, where the monsters have never attacked, so he can at least sleep comfortably and have snacks. Jeonjim is considering it, as he heard them mention vehicles, and that might be a way to get to his family, deciding that he needs to get information and that he cannot refuse. He accepts the offer and they begin to lead the way. He also notes he doesn't trust them, but worst case scenario, he can just go into his subspace. He realizes they do not know about his ability. As the group walks together, Jeonjim notices a man with a face he has never seen and feels like something about him is dangerous. They are shocked at the sudden appearance of an orc. They confirm that no one was injured, but they acknowledge the space is no longer safe. Jeonjim expresses concern that he was told it was safe from monsters. They introduce Jeonjim as the one who saved them from the wyvern. They also discuss the unique ability he used to kill it. The group praises Jeonjim for saving Yongsu and Byeonkyol. A woman hugs Jeonjim, thanking him profusely, and jokingly asks if he has a girlfriend. The people then begin to introduce themselves. Lee Jin-mak, the center manager of Daehin Express Terminal, thanks Jeonjim for saving his men. He then invites him in, offering food and a safe place to rest, explaining that they have plenty of supplies from the logistics center. A man then informs Lee Jin-mak that the logistics center has disappeared without a trace. He explains that is why they were chased by the wyvern. The survivors are shocked and ask how that is even possible, as the building was huge. Lee Jin-mak states that they don't know how it happened, but things are different now. He then decides that they need to dig through the tunnel, as things will only get worse if they stay here. Another survivor agrees, and they all decide to force their way through. Lee Jin-mak then asks if Jeonjim is coming. Lee Jin-mak explains that they need vehicles, as they all have homes in other areas. They have working vehicles, but all the roads are blocked. He explains that a golf course blocks the north. Containers block the east, and the expressway is destroyed to the south. The tunnel to the west is the only way out, but a group of wyverns has taken over it. He explains they were surviving off the supplies in the logistics center, but now they have to force their way through the tunnel. Jeonjim realizes he was right to suspect the group. Jeonjim states that he needs a vehicle as well, and he needs to go through the tunnel, adding that if it is just wyverns, then that's good, as he can use his ability to get rid of them. While Lee Jin-mak is not convinced, he accepts, recognizing his power. However, Jeonjim thinks to himself that while they may seem kind, he shouldn't overlook that they have been struggling, and that they likely won't share information, like the exact amount of food and water they have. He decides that he needs to scout the tunnel and the size of the wyverns, so he can clear the way alone, and that he'll use this to upgrade his abilities and get mana stones. He discovers new upgradable skills within his subspace: precise delivery, simultaneous delivery, and automatic delivery. He realizes that with 5 magic stones, he can reduce his shipping cooldown to 5 seconds. He decides that he needs to use the magic stones he has saved, and that the simultaneous delivery ability will be best for taking on multiple wyverns. The survivor tells Jeonjim that it's dangerous to go alone, who then reminds a man that he was just being chased by a wyvern. The man states that he believes Jeonjim will save them again. Jeonjim expresses gratitude for their trust. He is surprised by this, as he never expected someone to say they trust him. He looks at them confused. Jeonjim asks if he can see the message windows, since he's never used his abilities before. The man states that he hasn't seen them since his abilities awakened, but he has a good feeling about how to drive, and says he'll try. The man begins to drive, and Jeonjim is immediately concerned by his driving. He's having difficulty seeing because of the damaged vehicles on the road. The group states that there is a wyvern ahead. They then see several wyverns ahead. The group expresses panic, wondering what they should do. The survivor tells Jeonjim that he can't see, and asks what to do. Jeonjim tells him to keep driving. The tunnel is closer than he thought, and the group sees it. Then the man suddenly stops, saying nothing with express fear. He is stopped because the wyverns have surrounded them. They realize that they are surrounded and that there is no way they can outrun or kill them, even with Jeonjim's ability. The driver says it's over for them. Jeonjim realizes he can't hide his ability anymore, stating that there's no way they can handle this many wyverns. He makes the decision to use 10 mana stones for simultaneous delivery, and the remaining 5 for cooldown. Pax confirms this. Jeongeum activates his ability, and the screen flashes white. The scene then skips to show the result, with Jeongeum unharmed and the wyvern seemingly dead. The driver is completely confused at what has just occurred. He saw multiple axes flying through the air, and begins to realize that they came from another dimension. The story continues with Jeongeum inside his subspace. He uses 1 mana stone to reduce the cooldown time to 25 seconds, another to 20 seconds, another to 15 seconds, and then another which brings it to its minimum of 5 seconds. The system explains that he would need to level up his subspace to further reduce it. He tells Yongsu that he needs to stay close for protection. Yongsu agrees, and then seems shocked to see the logistics center behind Jeongeum. The wyverns begin to attack once more. Jeongeum begins launching axes toward the wyverns. Yongsu expresses disbelief that the logistics center is launching axes. He states that he doesn't understand, but recognizes that for Jeongeum, these monsters aren't a problem. He adds that if Jeongeum wants to pass through the tunnel, then he can do it easily. He realizes he doesn't need to use the vehicles as transport because he has his abilities. He expresses his jealousy that Jeongeum has the ability to get to his family faster. The survivor who was previously riding with Jeongeum mentions that the wyverns are running away, and then says they are smarter than they look. Jeongeum thinks that he wanted to enhance his precision delivery, but he is short on mana stones. Yongsu asks Jeongeum what the blue stones are, and Jeongeum tells him they are mana stones. Yongsu asks if it's Jeongeum's first time using them, and if abilities can be enhanced. Jeongeum confirms. He states that's why he didn't extract the mana stones from the Orc's corpse, implying that not all abilities work the same way. He then expresses his disbelief that Jeongeum has such an incredible ability. He also says that with his abilities, he could probably break through the tunnel alone. Jeongeum thinks to himself that he didn't intend to show off his abilities, and that he just planned to scout, then secretly break through. Yongsu apologizes for getting in the way, and Jeongeum states that he would not have been able to get through alone. He states that they should head back, as the wyvern might attack again soon. Yongsu then asks where he plans to go, asking if he needs a vehicle to do so. Jeongeum tells him he plans to go to Gangnam, then to Ujeongbu. Yongsu is surprised and says he is heading to Indyokwan, and that it's on the way to Gangnam. He then asks Jeongeum if he could accompany him to Indyokwan. Jeongeum is caught off guard by this. Yongsu reflects that if he goes through the tunnel, he is not sure if he will get home safe. He is confident in his driving abilities, but can't fight off monsters. Jeongeum realizes that Yongsu can help with driving, and that, more importantly, this will give him an excuse to hide his abilities. He decides that he trusts Yongsu, and agrees to let Yongsu drive. Jeongeum says he will have Yongsu drive, but he will handle the tunnel on his own, as others will only get in the way. He doesn't want his ability revealed, and asks that they let him handle the tunnel. Yongsu agrees and promises that he will get everyone to cooperate. He then tells everyone that Jeongeum will break through the tunnel alone with his ability, and they need to wait outside until it's done. Jeongeum is aghast at Yongsu's actions, realizing that Yongsu has revealed his secret despite asking him not to. The group begins discussing how Jeongeum will handle the tunnel, and wonders what his ability is. A survivor comments that this is someone they should be wary of. Another survivor states that he is now saying things that will only make them trust him less, while yet another says that they have no choice but to go along with it. Lee Jin-mak tells Jeongeum that he will not ask about his ability, and that they will wait so that he can scout the tunnel for them. He expresses gratitude that Jeongeum has made this decision out of consideration for them. As Jeongeum begins to move, Lee Jin-mak tells Jeongeum that they have gathered reserve food supplies to give to him for his journey. He also apologizes that all they could offer is food, and that Jeongeum also has to clear the tunnel. Jeongeum is taken aback by this, and says he did it because he needed to, and that the food is too much. He believes it must have been saved for their families, and tries to give it back. Lee Jin-mak tells him to accept it, and says it must have been hard for everyone to share their food. adding that he thinks they have families too. Lee Jin-mak then says it's time to bring out the alcohol. He states that it's a shame there's so little, but it's for the best. He pours them all some and tells them they can have just enough to safely arrive with their families. He proposes a toast to a safe arrival and for Jeongeum. Jeongeum is moved. As he's having a moment with the group, the screen shifts, showing the area before him as an open and destroyed world. The group begins to express alarm at this new vision. Jeongeum then says that he will be back and steps through the tunnel. The scene shifts to a flashback showing Jeongeum with his sisters, bickering as usual. He remembers his father telling them how he, as an only child, envied their bond. He reflects on the fact that he always envied the bond between siblings, and that he knows that one day they will realize just how precious family truly is. The scene then moves to Lee Jin-mak drunkenly missing his son, and he is scolded by the other members. The scene changes to Jeongeum leaving, saying that he is going out for fresh air. He is seen in the dark, then Yong-soo walks up to him. Yong-soo asks why he isn't sleeping and what he's doing. Jeongeum claims he can't sleep. Then Yong-soo loads up the remaining vehicles from the logistics center. He mentions that he loaded about half to avoid making the vehicle too heavy, but that it should be more than enough. He then states that he has filled all 15 vehicles. He asks Yong-soo to keep this a secret. Yong-soo thinks to himself about Jeongeum's generosity. Back into the tunnel, Jeongeum begins to think about using his abilities to put people into his subspace. He asks PX if it's possible to put other people in the subspace. Pak states that it isn't possible at the current level, but that at level 2 he would be able to accommodate up to 20 people. He needs 32 more mana stones to reach level 2. Jeongeum states that there are roughly 40 wyverns in the tunnel, with a few running away, and that leveling up here is unlikely. He also states that without the upgrade to precision delivery, he would not have been able to catch so many. He states that if he wants to eventually put his family into the subspace, he needs to level up. Suddenly, Jeongeum senses a different wyvern nearby. He can sense it is different than the others as he prepares to move once more. The scene then shifts to the rest of the group. They express concern about Jeongeum being alone. But then the group sees him return. They cheer, relieved to see him back. Jeongeum approaches the group and then mentions that everyone has worked hard and that he hopes they make it home safely, and also thanks Lee Jin-mak. Lee Jin-mak also hopes that Jeongeum reaches his family safely. Jeongeum then tells him if they run into trouble on the way to open the cargo hold, as he has prepared a small gift for them. He then states that they should hurry to see their families, and then begins to drive away. The scene shifts to Yong-soo driving, as Jeongeum realizes that something is wrong. He wonders what the wyvern was, as it ran away quickly. He believes it was bigger and different than the others, and wonders if it was a leader or an adult. He then hears a strange sound and realizes they have no choice but to move forward, and that with the corpses, monsters, and overturned vehicles, it's the same no matter where they go. He then worries that he is making things even more difficult for Jeongeum, and then reflects on the dead soldiers. Yong-soo is then shown that there is a barbed wire barricade in the road. Knowing it looks like the military put it up to block something, he realizes that they will have to take another route. He then states that he sees something at the end of a bridge, which turns out to be a horde of monsters. He realizes that this was what they were trying to block, and states that he will turn the vehicle around. Jeongeum tells him not to, and then asks if they can drive on the sidewalk to get past it. Yong-soo says yes, and then sees more of the monsters in the distance, and he begins to panic. Jeongeum realizes that they must be there for a reason, and says that it is a good way to level up. He tells Yong-soo that there is no need to turn back, and they need to keep going. Yong-soo is in shock but agrees and begins to move forward. Jeongeum asks Yong-soo if he has ever heard of the game where 3 races wage war against each other. Yong-soo recognizes it, and Jeongeum states that he is reminded of a custom game mode where players use limited units and terrain to fend off hordes of monsters. He mentions that the current situation is quite similar. He then tells Yong-soo to reverse the vehicle to a specific spot. As they do, Jeongeum spends 10 mana stones and unlocks auto ship. He then uses the remaining mana stones to increase the shipping speed to 100 kilometers per hour. He states, if you've already had your fill, come here. It's playtime. He summons a double-door refrigerator, launching it towards the oncoming horde of mutated dogs. The refrigerator, a massive white rectangle, is sent hurtling through the air with a whoosh, crashing into the pack of monsters. One of the beasts is sent flying, while others are crushed under the sheer weight of the appliance. He receives 12 mana stones from the kills. He expresses his delight as he states, "Oh, this is it." Jeonjim reflects on his enhanced shipping range and precision delivery, recognizing that while he could throw axes with speed, precision delivery doesn't exactly track the target to the end. It only slightly adjusts its direction. The mutated hounds are fast and incredibly quick, making axes ineffective even when flying at 100 kilometers per hour. Additionally, they don't stop even when their comrades are killed next to them. He concludes that a refrigerator is better because not only is it larger, but the weight can take them down with just a graze. He thinks that with his new auto ship, it will be even more convenient. He instructs PX to keep holding on. Yongsu is in disbelief as he sees a refrigerator being launched toward the horde. Confused as to how he can keep firing the same refrigerator, he wonders if the items that are being retrieved are coming back as new products. Jeonjim then asks Yongsu if he would like something to eat. He then realizes Yongsu's true question and asks if the stock is infinite, and if Yongsu didn't realize he was retrieving the axes from the ground. He then clarifies that he is just collecting them from the ground so they don't damage people's feet. Yongsu asks if it's true that the stock is infinite, and Jeonjim confirms, then asks what Yongsu would like to eat. Yongsu says that he wants a Coke Zero and a donut. Yongsu says that he is ashamed as he doesn't even know what Jeonjim's ability is, but he wanted to share his food. Jeonjim expresses his gratitude and says that he went on patrol and that there is everything in the logistics center. He adds that he thinks he will be able to get home soon. Yongsu confirms and says that they are an hour from his home and he hopes that everyone, including Jeonjim, stays safe. Jeonjim replies that he's worried, as he doesn't think he can show up to his family in his current state. He suggests getting some new clothes for the time being. Yongsu says he can help with that, but that he's not sure if he has what he's looking for. Jeonjim mentions that the issues with the wyverns have been mostly solved and that they should leave soon. Yongsu begins to drive, and Jeonjim asks him to slow down as he starts to feel sick. Yongsu says that it will only take 20 minutes. He continues to drive incredibly fast down the narrow road. Suddenly, Yongsu slams on the brakes and they come to a halt. Yongsu proclaims that they have arrived. The scene shifts, showing them in a new area. Yongsu, observing the dilapidated buildings, notices that the buildings themselves are old. He also notes that there are only remnants of the buildings, but no corpses. He states that it is different from the main street and decides that his family will be safe. He states that he just needs to open the door. Jeonjim reflects on Yongsu's frantic desire to see his family. He stepped on the accelerator so hard that he traveled an hour's distance in less than 20 minutes. Jeonjim recognizes that if Yongsu had to face a cold corpse, he would not be able to open the door. He then thinks to himself that he would rather have someone else open the door for him. He then wonders if he should just press the doorbell for him. He then says that he will. Jeonjim states that no one wants to confirm their family's death, even if there's only a 1% chance. He steps to the door to ring the doorbell. The door is then opened by Yongsu's family, who look shocked, but quickly show relief and cry. Yongsu asks his wife how she knew to open the door, and she mentions that she heard a noise and looked through the peephole. Yongsu then hugs his family and is relieved that they are safe. Yongsu's child says that she hates him, but then hugs him. Yongsu's wife then asks who Jeonjim is. Yongsu tells them that he is the person who helped him get there safely. Yongsu then calls out to Jeonjim to introduce them. Jeonjim starts to faint and reflects that he can't sleep there, as his last memory was hazy. He is shown being supported by Yongsu's family, who are trying to help him rest. Jeonjim starts dreaming of his interaction with his father at a funeral, saying that the emotion of parting does not just include sadness, but affection, gratitude, regret, longing, those kinds of emotions. He is then reminded that the best type of love is caring without expecting anything in return, and that he needs to be grateful. He reflects on that idea, and then recalls his memory of his sisters. He remembers how his sister would playfully hurt him, all while his dad is stating that the two look like they get along well, but states that they will one day realize how precious family is. He then shifts to seeing his sister in college as she got into nursing school. A notification pops up on screen, stating that she has been accepted. He then remembers his dad, who tells him that it is time. His memory shifts to the moment he leaves to start his military enlistment, as he is told to come back safe and not to get hurt. Suddenly, the image starts to distort and he begins to open his eyes. He feels pain and then suddenly he wakes up and asks where he is. Jeonjim, scared, wonders if he fainted, and that his last memory is hazy. He reaches for an axe from his subspace. Then he hears a voice. Yongsu is shown, asking if Jeonjim is awake. Yongsu's wife asks if he is okay, as he suddenly collapsed and fell asleep. She says that she didn't wake him because he looked like he was sleeping soundly. Jeonjim responds that it's okay and asks, as he hides his axe, how long he was asleep. Yongsu's wife states that he was asleep for about 3 hours and that her husband told her everything. She then thanks him profusely for helping her see her husband again. Jeonjim humbly states that he also received a lot of help from Mr. Yongsu. Yongsu's wife then insists that Jeonjim must be hungry and that he needs to eat before they talk. She mentions that her husband insisted on eating with him and hasn't eaten yet because of that. Jeonjim agrees. He is then shown the food, and he is surprised that it is conger eel stew. Yongsu's wife says that it is the best that she could manage with limited ingredients. Jeonjim responds that there is no more luxurious meal than this. He then thanks her and begins to eat. The flavors unfold on the tip of his tongue, combining the sweet and oily taste of the stir-fried kimchi and the clean, savory taste of the mackerel. He also states that it even feels cozy. He is left alone and says that he ate well. He reflects that he hasn't eaten that well since before the apocalypse, and even since leaving the military. He then mentions that it was comparable to his mother's kimchi stew. Yongsu then tells him that he will drive him to Gangnam. Jeonjim then states that Gangnam is not his final destination, as he needs to go to Ujeongbu and will need the car for longer. Yongsu then states that he understands and that he has a condition. He then states that they should talk outside. Yongsu states that they will go together in the truck to Gangnam and that he will take the bicycle to return. He says that the condition is that Jeonjim gives him the electric bicycle when he needs it. He says that even though the electric bicycle is not much, that he will help Jeonjim get to Gangnam as fast as he can. Jeonjim agrees, but is confused as to why he is taking such a risk. Yongsu states that with his skills, he could outrun the monsters. He then asks why Jeonjim is trying to help him. Yongsu then states that if it wasn't for Jeonjim, that he would not have made it this far, and that he might have died in the tunnel if it weren't for him. He says he is just trying to give help in return. He states that they are in the same difficult situation, and that if they help each other, that it would be good. He also adds that he might be presumptuous, but that he is not foolish enough to risk his life. Jeonjim states that he does understand, and then tells Yongsu that since he's shown him his ability, that he will show him as well. He states that his ability, subspace, is a space that nothing can enter without his permission, and that as long as it is maintained, he can even duplicate items from the storage facility. Yongsu confirms he understands. Jeonjim states that if Yongsu wants to help him, that he also has a condition, that Yongsu must stay with him until he is done it with Ujeongbu. He also adds that when he levels up the subspace, that he can also bring them in with him. He states that he was able to level up after defeating the monster dogs, and that if Yongsu continues to help him, that he will also protect his family. Yongsu then states that he will bring his wife and daughter, and that they should leave right away. The scene then changes to Jeonjim in his subspace. He uses 100 mana stones to upgrade his subspace to level 2. He is given the additional ability to store items in front of him, with a storage capacity of 1 item, and the maintenance cost increases to 6. He acknowledges the new features and states that he will check on them later. Then, an external presence tries to enter, and he asks to allow entry for Yongsu, his wife, and his daughter. They are then shown being amazed by the size of the subspace. He tells them that if they need anything they can ask PX, and that everything is infinite. He tells Yongsu to take a break as he checks on his new abilities, then mentions they will leave in 30 minutes. Yongsu's wife then states that she will prepare some snacks. Jeongeum is then shown the new abilities that he has acquired. Subspace Lab and simultaneous shipping too. Jeongeum reflects on the original form of his subspace ability, which allowed him to store an object in front of him, access it at any time, and prevent anything from entering without his permission. He then recalls how his ability was enhanced after storing the logistics center, because an operating system compatible with the system's functionality was discovered and updated, merging Pack's AI and the Awakening System OS. This resulted in new functions like the shipment, where he hurls items at 100 kilometers per hour. He mentions that he didn't expect any additional abilities as he leveled up, but that's what happened. He received a notification stating that as his subspace leveled up, that he can store objects in front of him with a storage capacity of 1. He also acknowledges the new subspace lab ability, which allows for the combination, separation, and transformation of items. He wonders what that could mean, thinking about creating something by combining items. He notes that it requires a whopping 50 mana stones, and then decides to check the new abilities later. He then decides that all he can confirm is that he can store an object in front of him. He recalls storing the Pax FC in his subspace, thinking he was losing his mind. He then wonders what he would store and thinks of storing the Earth. He then is given a message that he has failed to store the Earth. He mentions that he figured that it wouldn't work and that it would be too overpowered if it did. Yongsu comes to him and says that he has checked the route to Gangnam and that they should take the main road. Jeongeum agrees. He then asks why Yongsu isn't playing with his daughter. Yongsu says that she fell asleep after playing for a bit, as it seems she felt safe in the subspace. Yongsu then thanks Jeongeum once more and says that he is really grateful, and that he knows that he has helped him as much as Yongsu has helped him. Yongsu then says that he will do whatever he can to help, and becomes serious, and Jeongeum wonders why he is suddenly being so serious. Yongsu then states that he will help, and that driving is the only thing he can help with, but in terms of speed he is faster than anyone. Jeongeum then jokingly asks him to drive slowly. Yongsu says he can't, as Jeongeum has helped him, and that they should speed up. The scene then shifts to them driving, and it is shown that they are moving at an incredible speed. Jeongeum notes that the area is more deserted than the main road, and that it seems like there aren't many monsters where there are no people. Yongsu then states that he has heard that this area is a Bronze Age archaeological site, and that it hasn't been developed. He adds that even though the road is a bit rough, there aren't any monsters or suspicious people. Then, he notes a military barricade with spike strips. Yongsu then wonders if the military is still present. However, Jeongeum states that they are not military personnel, just using the equipment. He states that they've probably been watching them from somewhere, and that it looks like they won't be able to avoid them. Jeongeum opens a small portal under the steering wheel and tells Yongsu to get inside. Yongsu asks if he will be okay, and Jeongeum states that he will be fine, and that if they intended to kill them, they would have shot already. He notes that there are 3 of them. The scene shifts to the people that have stopped them. One notes that the driver sucks. They then tell them to get out and open the cargo. They are surprised to see all of the food, and then ask where they got it. Jeongeum says that it is from a logistics center. One of the men says that it is time, and they should wrap it up and take him. One of them punches Jeongeum in the stomach, bringing him to his knees, as another pulls a cover over his head. Jeongeum is then shown being led into a dimly lit room. He is then told that he is with a group called the Joint Command Communications Headquarters. He is told that he was brought there quickly. They then reveal that he is standing by a soldier's corpse. He is told that the man with the hood was brought there for them to have a look at him, and then asked if he had the food that they were told that he has. They state that he said it came from a logistics center, and that he is the only one who can get in. They then ask him where he got them. Jeongeum confirms it is from the Gunpo Logistics Center. One of the men states that it is smart and that they should have gone there first. A monster sound is then heard. The man with the long coat confirms that they are facing a wyvern, then says that it is huge and no joke and that he almost died to it. He also mentions that his attacks felt blocked by something. He states that a soldier who attacked it with bullets had his head smashed into a wall and died. He then states that if his powers don't work on it, that bullets wouldn't have a chance. He states that they were recruiting people to fight the monsters, but that the military was weak. So he took over. He then clarifies that he hasn't killed them yet. He tells Jeongeum that he wanted to keep them alive because they seemed to know a lot, but he was starving, and that they would have probably died on their own. He then states that there are weapons and everything, but that they are out of food and that they will go to the logistics center with Jeongeum to get more. Telling him not to worry, as if they accept him as a member of the family, they can protect them. Jeongeum, disgusted, realizes that this is the perfect place to store and states to PX to store the Joint Command Communications headquarters in the subspace. The scene cuts to Jeongeum as he finishes storing the military base with a resounding thwomp. The leader, not understanding what had happened, exclaims, "What the? Where's the building?" Jeongeum then notes to himself that suddenly he just feels dizzy, similar to when he stored the PX. He also adds he needs to cut the line quickly. As the wyverns start to come near, they take to the air, seemingly attracted by the sounds. A series of creatures starts to converge on the location with razor-sharp teeth. A man from the military base cries out to run. He cries out that they are to shoot the smaller ones down first, then handle the bigger one. He wonders if just guns will work, but states that if he is able to use his ability, that he may be able to catch it. One of the surviving personnel cries out that they are traitors. After that, he realizes that he is in big trouble. The wyvern comes very close and has very defined scales and a menacing snarl. Jeongeum activates his ability and drags a soldier with him. The system asks him if he wants to grant the soldier access, and he confirms. He notes from the side that he is feeling dizzy from the transfer. He states the process is still ongoing. Jeongeum notes that he was able to sneak in during the chaos. He states that he now needs to account for storing things, as there could be dangerous aftereffects. The leader of the group is yelling and is charging forward with a melee weapon in hand. He's yelling about them being lizard bastards. He comes up to the creature and starts unleashing punches left and right, with what seems to be heavy blows. He is then seen exhausted and mentions he's leveled up and that he can take it now. Youngsu runs to Jeongeum asking if he is okay and also asks who is with him. Jeongeum informs him that it seems that the figure is from the military and that he was being tortured. As they lay him down on a bed, Youngsu states that there's no major bleeding. Youngsu then tells Jeongeum about the building seeming to have appeared suddenly. They wonder what it is and note that from the outside, it just looks huge. Youngsu says that it seems to be a military base. Jeongeum then states that he brought it in, but didn't expect it to be that big. He also remembers being blindfolded and not seeing the exterior and realizes he needs to check. He asks Youngsu to look after the person and that he will be right back. Jeongeum states to himself that the possibilities of a military base are endless and that there are guns, ammo, explosives, gas masks, and even military vehicles. He then states that it is the perfect place to survive in the apocalypse, but then adds that using it will be a hassle and different than the logistics center. He states that with the logistics center, PX could handle everything. Jeongeum mentions that the guns are in the armory and the ammo and explosives in the magazine, and that they need to fetch it themselves. He realizes that he had no idea how big the military base was while he was blindfolded, and that it is even bigger than PX. Even if they find it, Youngsu has no combat experience. Just then, PX drone startles him inside the military space. Pax informs him that Sector 2 was added to the program, and it can now be treated like the warehouse. Jeongeum expresses confusion, and PX continues. As an outcome, items from Sector 2 will be the same as Sector 1. Jeongeum thinks about this, then states, "Wait, are you saying?" Jeongeum, surprised, confirms with PX that this means the rifles and ammo can be duplicated and shipped out. Pax confirms, but notes the process is still ongoing. The progress is at 0.81%. Jeongeum asks for an estimate of the completion time. Pax states it's difficult to say, but offers to prioritize specific items. Jeongeum requests rifles, ammo, grenades, vehicles, and fuel. Pax confirms prioritization within 10 minutes and offers to restrict ordering permissions for those items, which Jeongeum approves of, expressing some distrust of the soldier. Jeongeum reflects on the situation outside, hoping for a resolution but acknowledging it's unlikely due to the sheer number of wyverns. He concludes the only option is to fight. He then equips himself with a rifle from the subspace, handing several large boxes of ammo to Yongsu. He explains that each box holds 10,000 rounds and to discard the gun if it jams. He asks Yongsu if he knows how to shoot. Yongsu confidently replies that seeing is faster than explaining. Yongsu opens fire on the wyverns, rapidly shooting down several. He comments on the difficulty of rapid fire, but notes they seem to have the situation under control for now. Jeongeum agrees, but notes that there was a large wyvern that is now missing. Jeongeum, inside the subspace, scans the area outside, knowing that he can't see any enemies and wonders if they are hiding. He decides to send out a remote-controlled toy car as bait. Yongsu expresses doubt about its effectiveness, but Jeongeum assures him he has a plan. The large wyvern suddenly appears, having been hidden. It swoops down and destroys the toy car. Jeongeum comments that it was indeed hiding. He tells Yongsu to shoot, and Yongsu opens fire with the rifle, hitting the wyvern multiple times. However, the monster seems largely unaffected and roars in defiance. Yongsu expresses surprise at its resilience, questioning how it can still be standing and if it's deflecting the bullets with its thick hide. Jeongeum agrees that something feels off, remembering a thug mentioning a similar situation. He suggests that their attacks are being blocked rather than deflected. Jeongeum decides to test his theory, proposing a competition to see whether the wyvern's defense is stronger or their attacks are more powerful. He emphasizes their limitless supply of weapons from the subspace. He then begins launching grenades at the wyvern, commenting on the physical strain of throwing so many. The wyvern, though hit by multiple explosions, still stands, albeit with some of its hide peeled off. Jeongeum is shocked at the creature's resilience, questioning what kind of monster it is. He questions if it has left. Yongsu confirms, but doubts it was because of their attacks. Jeongeum agrees, suggesting it retreated for another reason. He proposes they continue moving. Yongsu expresses concern about driving at night. Jeongeum shares Yongsu's apprehension, still shaken by the encounter. He reflects on how even grenades barely scratch the monster, leading him to question what weapons they could possibly use against something even stronger. He acknowledges the shrapnel from grenades is more dangerous than the explosion itself, and notes that using larger explosives could pose a risk to innocent people, as well as potentially make them appear monstrous. He ponders creating a weapon that's as powerful as a bomb, but without collateral damage. Jeongeum checks his mana stone count, surprised to find he has 314. He reflects on the large amount he acquired from the wyvern, but concludes that he's not short on stones. He then uses the stones to upgrade his abilities, increasing launch speed to 150 kilometers per hour, reducing launch preparation time to 1 second, increasing simultaneous launch capacity to 4 items, and increasing launch range to 50 meters. He acknowledges the increased cost of upgrades, but is pleased with the increased power of his ability. He then unlocks the Pocket Dimension Lab, admitting curiosity about its function. He informs Yongsu he wants to try it out, but needs to stop the car. Yongsu expresses concern about stopping and suggests to Jeongeum to try getting to his subspace as he continues to drive. Jeongeum agrees to try and is shocked that it worked. Yongsu then tells Jeongeum to just go ahead and not to worry about him, as if something happens he will just jump in as well. Jeongeum enters the Pocket Dimension Lab within his subspace, finding it initially unremarkable. Pax explains its functions. Combine allows combining 2 or more objects, and separate allows separating an object into its component materials. Jeonjim asks PX if he can register grenade with the pin removed and if it won't explode. Pax confirms and explains that the items exist in digital form within the subspace, preventing accidental detonation. He registers the prepared grenades, noting they are better than nothing, and then considers registering a rifle with an attached magazine. He thinks about attaching 2 magazines together, and then realizes he can create a powerful weapon without excessive collateral damage. Outside, Yongsu observes a barricade of stacked cars blocking the road, wondering what happened and how the cars ended up like a wall. He expresses concern about needing to turn back. Jeonjim rejoins him, saying that turning back won't be necessary, as he's created a new weapon. Jeonjim then summons his newly crafted weapon and launches it. The cars explode outwards. Yongsu, amazed, asks what Jeonjim created. It is shown to be a stack of 20 kilograms weights. 2 men are observing the aftermath of Jeonjim's attack on the barricade of cars. One of them wonders aloud what happened and if the wall collapsed, noting it shouldn't have fallen so easily. The other asking what that is, pointing to something in the distance. Jeonjim greets the 2 men, asking if Nurse Joyeon is here. A flashback begins, showing Joyeon studying, asking her siblings to quiet down. Her younger siblings question her sudden diligence, wondering if she's sick and suggesting they tell their mother. Joyeon brushes them off, explaining she's found her dream. She declares she will still treat the sick, even if the world were to end tomorrow. Her sister suggests going to the hospital, concerned about her worsening condition. Despite this, Joyeon persists in her studies, her grades improving dramatically. The scene shifts to her family celebrating her acceptance into nursing school. The flashback ends, and the scene returns to the present. Joyeon rushes towards Jeonjim, relieved he's made it, and asking if he's hurt. He reassures her and introduces Yongsu. Joyeon thanks Yongsu for helping Jeonjim and offers him a chocolate bar, which he declines, saying he's had enough to last a lifetime. Jeonjim then informs Joyeon that there is a patient. Joyeon asks where the patient is, and Jeonjim explains he's inside his subspace, a space accessible only through his ability. Joyeon questions his ability, and Jeonjim confirms he is awakened. He explains that revealing his ability in public would be problematic, and suggests it would be easier inside the hospital. Inside the hospital, Joyeon marvels at the various buildings inside Jeonjim's subspace. He tells her he'll explain later and leads her to the patient, Han Hyung-ho. Joyeon assesses his condition, declaring that under normal conditions he won't survive. However, he is lucky since she is also awakened as a healer. She explains her healing abilities are limited, but enough to prevent death, and that proper meals will facilitate recovery. Jeonjim remarks on her determination to treat the sick, even with the world ending, echoing her own words from the past. Joyeon then laments about not disciplining him properly when they were younger. Jeonjim offers Joyeon bread made by Yongsu's wife, suggesting he explains what's happening while they eat. Jeonjim recounts his experience being trapped in the factory and being saved by PX. Jongsu's wife offers more bread and informs Joyeon she set up the staff lounge for her to rest. Joyeon thanks her and questions how they ended up staying here. Jeonjim, exasperated, points out she wasn't listening and says he's too tired to repeat the story. Jeonjim then briefly explains he's going to bring his family into the subspace and that he's heading to Yojiro next to find his other sister. Joyeon declares she's staying at the hospital. Jeonjim, surprised, asks why, assuming it's because of the patients. Joyeon confirms a large number of patients needing care, but clarifies that isn't the main issue. The scene shifts to the hospital's internal medicine department head, Jin Seong-hak, discussing the arrival of Jeonjim and Yongsu. They detail the car crashing through the wall and their arrival in military vehicles, questioning if they're special forces. One guard mentions one of them is Joyeon's brother, leading Seong-hak to dismiss any concerns about hostility. He suggests rationing food and using Joyeon to their advantage. He asks a large person behind him if the awakened newcomers are stronger than him. The other person expresses doubt. Seong-hak instructs him to greet the newcomers warmly and asks if the broken wall is fixed. The other person confirms. Joyeon explains that head Jin Seonghak is using his ability to poison people and control them. She states that most of the awakened in the hospital are being controlled by him. The poisoned awakened ones are guarding food and mana stones. Joyeon, back with Jeongeum, reveals she's been secretly siphoning mana stones to strengthen her healing ability, hoping to cure the poisoning. She urges Jeongeum, So, and their parents to leave, saying she'll find a way to survive. Jeongeum refuses, stating it's dangerous. Joyeon reveals that head Jin Seonghak uses food as a weapon of control. Jeongeum, realizing the situation, declares he'll handle it quickly and will demonstrate his ability. He summons energy bars and combat rations.
In Jin Seonghak's office, he questions the urgent report he's received about Joyeon's brother bringing in a substantial amount of food. He initially dismisses the threat, believing that 2 people and a single military vehicle couldn't possibly have much. He smugly assumes they'll soon run out and come begging for food, commenting on their foolish generosity. However, a subordinate reveals they have more food than what's currently stored in the hospital, leaving Seonghak stunned. He questions how such a thing is possible, speculating about abilities to replicate or shrink and enlarge objects. He concludes they're definitely ability users and orders his men to capture them. He hands a drug to a subordinate, instructing him to get Jeongeum addicted by any means necessary, and to kill him if it doesn't work. He then inquires about the other person who arrived with them. Meanwhile, Jeongeum searches the hospital, failing to locate the individuals he's seeking. He wonders if he missed them and expresses frustration at the delay. Joyeon asks about his plan to neutralize Jin Seonghak's weapon, which is food. Jeongeum confirms, outlining his simple plan to distribute their own food, subdue the addicted ability users, and deal with Jin Seonghak, whom he considers a minor threat. Jeongeum inquires about the abilities of the addicted users. Joyeon describes the abilities, which include resealing opened cans and automatic laundry, much to Jeongeum's disbelief. She confirms that most of them aren't threatening, except for one person, Song Hyun-gu. She explains that Hyun-gu came from Yuljiro, worried about his hospitalized mother. Joyeon explains Hyun-gu's immense strength, referencing the car barricade outside as proof, revealing Hyun-gu built it with his bare hands. As they speak, 2 figures approach, and one addresses Jeongeum as Nurse Kim Joyeon's younger brother. He requests a conversation. Jeongeum agrees, adding that he also has business with Song Hyun-gu. The figure, revealed to be Hyun-gu, expresses confusion but states it doesn't matter anymore. Outside, he gives Jeongeum 2 choices: drink a vial of medicine or refuse and die. He warns Jeongeum against running. Jeongeum, unfazed, proposes a third option. Hyun-gu rushes towards Jeongeum menacingly. He swiftly activates his subspace ability. A glowing blue portal opens, and with a flick of his wrist, Jeongeum sends a high-spin bowling ball hurtling towards Hyun-gu at 90 kilometers per hour. The ball strikes Hyun-gu with a resounding thud, sending him sprawling. Jeongeum apologizes for the speed, but prepares to launch another. Hyun-gu, struggling to move, questions Jeongeum's ability. Jeongeum launches another bowling ball, this one at a slower speed, but still warns Hyun-gu against moving, as its weight is enough to break bones. He continues the relentless barrage, with 20 kilograms weights emerging from the subspace portal one after another, trapping Hyun-gu under a growing metallic pile. Hyun-gu roars in frustration and pain as he struggles against the increasing weight, but the constant assault keeps him pinned, his movements becoming more and more restricted. The 20 kilograms weights, cold and unforgiving, form a heavy metallic prison around him. Jeongeum, watching impassively, thanks Hyun-gu for remaining still, explaining it made the stacking process much more efficient. He assures Hyun-gu he'll be released once the situation is resolved. Joyeon asks if Jeongeum encountered Hyun-gu, noting she heard a loud noise. He confirms and says he's on his way back, having just met Hyun-gu. Joyeon, seeing the trapped Hyun-gu, is shocked and demands an explanation. Jeongeum dismisses it as a long story and asks if she's finished distributing the food. She confirms, and they wait for Yongsu's arrival. Yongsu arrives, staggering and clutching his head. He complains of a severe headache, questioning if it's poisoning. Joyeon confirms his suspicion. Jeongeum notices a fresh wound on Yongsu's finger, deducing he was stabbed with poison while receiving thanks for distributing food. Joyeon examines the wound, confirming it was inflicted with the intention to poison him. She suggests confining Yongsu for a while. Jeongeum agrees, concerned about the complications of Yongsu being poisoned. He expresses the need to meet Jin Seonghak and find a cure. As he leads Yongsu within the subspace, a notification appears, confirming an unidentified energy from outside was blocked, reinforcing the subspace's invulnerability to external connections. Yongsu, now inside the subspace, notices his headache is gone. Jeongeum questions the external energy notification. Suddenly, Song Hyungu appears within the subspace. Jeongeum is taken aback. Then a notification asks if he wants to unregister Song Hyungu from the subspace. Jeongeum confirms, and Hyungu vanishes. Jeongeum expresses his astonishment, realizing the subspace blocks not only physical, but also mental attacks. Hyungu reappears outside the subspace, apologizes to his mother, reassuring her it's not his fault. He tells her to go back to sleep, saying he has something to do. She expresses concern for his safety. He recalls his vivid memories of being trapped and expresses a desire to settle things with Jin Seonghak before expressing gratitude and apologizing to Jeongeum. He acknowledges his immense debt to them. He reassures Joyeon he'll return quickly. Joyeon and Yongsu discuss the situation, expressing concern about Song Hyungu's strength and the possibility of leaving the next morning. Hyungu confronts Jin Seonghak, who remarks on his arrival. Notifications appear, confirming the loss of connection with his minion. Seonghak, acknowledging what happened, asks for mercy. Without a word, Hyungu knocks him cold with a single blow. The scene shifts to Joyeon and Jeongeum discussing how to handle the poisoned individuals in the hospital. Joyeon suggests bringing everyone into Jeongeum's subspace, as she can't distinguish between those who are addicted and those who aren't. Jeongeum agrees, but questions the logistics of moving so many people, especially given the late hour and some people's limited mobility. Joyeon explains that even a fingertip entering the subspace will be enough to cleanse them. She adds that once everyone is processed, they can focus on those currently acting as patients. Just as they prepare for a long night of moving people, they're interrupted by an old man who have been freed from the effects of the poison. Hyungu then shows up expressing relief and gratitude to Jeongeum for their rescue. Jeongeum realizes that Hyungu took care of Jin Seonghak, eliminating the need to move everyone individually. Jeongeum, looking at Hyungu's bruised but recovering form, and comments that he understands how Hyungu took care of things and apologizes for launching the weights with excessive force earlier. Hyungu brushes it off, saying he's fine, just lightly bruised. He admits to being shocked by the attack, saying that even the strangest monsters couldn't compare to the experience of weights raining down from the sky. Jeongeum replies, with a touch of humor, that he's sometimes surprised by his own abilities. Hyungu asks if Jeongeum plans to stay at the hospital. Hyungu, acknowledging Jeongeum's help, says he'd prefer Jeongeum to stay, but understands his need to reunite with his family. He thanks Jeongeum and wishes him a safe journey. Jeongeum reveals they're heading to Yuljiro, prompting a surprised reaction from Hyungu. He warns Jeongeum against going there, describing the troublesome state of Yuljiro. Hyungu explains that as he was leaving Yuljiro, a massive wall was rising between it and Namsan, growing from the ground like a tooth. He estimates its height to be comparable to an average building by now, effectively making ground travel impossible. He also notes the different types of monsters in Yuljiro compared to Gangnam. Yuljiro is infested with undead skeletons, creatures that keep coming back to life even after being killed. Despite the dangers, Jeongeum expresses confidence in his second sister's ability to survive, believing she could handle monsters even without powers. Jeongeum receives a call from Joyeon, informing him that the soldier he rescued has awakened. He greets the now-awake Han Kyung-ho, who thanks him profusely for saving his life. He introduces himself as a colonel from the 50th Intelligence Communications Battalion. Jeongeum confirms his name and asks about Kyung-ho's well-being. Kyung-ho expresses gratitude for the treatment, and then questions their current location, observing the military command outside, but noting the absence of surrounding buildings. Jeongeum explains they're in the staff lounge of the PAC's FC Logistics Center within his subspace ability, and that outside is Gangnam, near Hanam Bridge. Kyung-ho, bewildered, struggles to comprehend the situation. Joyeon clarifies that everything around them is a product of Jeongeum's ability. Kyung-ho, still trying to process the information, requests to be let off there. Jeongeum assures him they mean him no harm. Yongsu also assures him and emphasizes that Jeongeum isn't dangerous. Kyung-ho acknowledges their kindness, but explains his urgent need to reach the Joint Chiefs of Staff, hinting at a serious situation he can't disclose. Jeongeum understands and agrees to his request. He then asks PX for a banana milk and a sandwich, offering it to Kyung-ho. But not before Kyung-ho explains the reason for his urgency. Kyung-ho hesitates, and Jeongeum, noticing his reluctance, instead offers a variety of steaming hot foods. Kyung-ho begins to explain, recounting the sudden global appearance of creatures from another world, including monsters, insects, animals, plants, and even geographical features. He describes their indiscriminate attacks on everything in sight. He explains that the government began recruiting awakened individuals to combat the monsters, forming specialized units. His own unit, stationed near Gwacheon and Anyang, had achieved a degree of stability until a powerful dragon appeared, resistant to all their weapons. He continues, explaining how requests for support from nearby units went unanswered, as they were also facing powerful monsters. Communication with command was also lost, which he found strange, as they could usually contact them during battles. Faced with imminent destruction, they decided to move to the National Communication Command. During the perilous journey, many of his comrades died or were injured, forcing them to recruit more awakened along the way. Upon arrival, they found the command deserted, discovering documents hinting at a coup. He attempted to reach the Joint Chiefs of Staff, but was trapped by the dragon and betrayed by some of the awakened recruits who had sided with the coup. He concludes that the First Corps is likely blocking government troop movements, and he needs to report this immediately. Jeongeum understands the gravity of the situation. He offers to drop Kyung-ho off at the Han River Bridge on their way to Yeoljiro and suggests traveling together as far as possible. Kyung-ho initially declines, wanting to leave immediately, but Jeongeum insists he rests. Kyung-ho thanks him. Jeongeum tells Yongsu it's time to go, instructing him to drive quickly, but not at maximum speed. He clarifies, saying time is of the essence. As they talk, Kyung-ho tries to alert them to a monster staring intently at them. But before he can talk, a stack of 20 kgs weights sends the monster flying, leaving him wondering what had happened. Jeongeum calmly requests PX to deploy Military Vehicle 1. Pax confirms, and a moment later, a military vehicle appears beside them. Kyung-ho is astonished, questioning the sudden appearance of the vehicle. Jeongeum instructs him to continue eating and resting, explaining that while their destination is close, he will leave a portal open so he can observe the situation outside. Jeongeum launches 20 kilograms weights at the Orcs. The weight, now a deadly projectile, blurs through the air towards the unsuspecting Orcs, impacting with a sickening crunch. The Orcs stagger, momentarily stunned, before collapsing. Jeongeum continues the assault, summoning and launching more weights in rapid succession. The weights, appearing as a relentless stream of metal, pummel the Orcs, each impact accompanied by a spray of blood and gore. The air crackles with the raw power of Jeongeum's ability. Kyung-ho watches in awe through the portal, remarking on the incredible speed and precision of the attack, noting the ability to change direction and retrieve the weights, as well as the automatic extraction of mana stones from the slain monster. He concludes that Jeongeum possesses an exceptionally powerful and versatile ability. Yongsu reports that they've reached Bampo Bridge, including the underwater section, but the road ahead is impassable. Jeongeum apologizes to Kyung-ho for the unforeseen delay, explaining they'll need to find another route. Kyung-ho, ever the pragmatic soldier, simply states that he's grateful for any assistance they can provide, and says he'll return to the subspace. They agree to move forward. Jeongeum reflects on the speed of their journey, barely an hour to travel from Gangnam to Bampo Bridge, a feat made even more remarkable considering the detours and monster encounters along the way. He credits both his own ability and Yongsu's exceptional driving skills. Kyung-ho also notes Yongsu's ability to navigate the treacherous, rubble-strewn roads with almost supernatural speed and precision, causing him dizziness just watching. He concludes that both men possess remarkable, though very different, talents. Yongsu, peering through the windshield, identifies a potential path forward. He indicates a narrow opening between buildings, but points out a massive fortress wall blocking their way. He confirms its size and admits that it's hard to tell if it can be broken through. He says they should drive over there and see. Kyung-ho realizes that this route would take them through Yongsan, and Jeongeum agrees to drop him off there, as it's on their way. As they drive closer, Kyung-ho observes the destroyed landscape, noting the devastation of Gwacheon, Anyang, and even the 56th Division. The scene shifts to a sterile, brightly lit military office. A subordinate informs the director of a visitor, the commander of the 50th Signal Battalion, Han Kyung-ho, explaining that Kyung-ho claims his entire unit was annihilated and that he has a vital message to deliver. The director, his expression skeptical, questions the truth of this claim before eventually agreeing to the meeting. Kyung-ho is shown walking down a brightly lit corridor, his footsteps echoing in the otherwise silent space. Kyung-ho stands before the director, recounting his harrowing experiences. The director listens intently, then expresses his gratitude for Kyung-ho's service and sacrifice, acknowledging the tremendous service he's rendered to the country. He then reveals that he's heard the reports of Jeongeum's abilities from Kyung-ho. He mentions Jeongeum's request for a helicopter in exchange for supplies, including food. The director acknowledges that helicopters are valuable strategic assets, but admits that given the nature of Jeongeum's abilities, delivering one wouldn't be impossible. He then pauses, adding that there's a condition to his offer. The director states his condition. Jeongeum must join the military as an awakened member. He emphasizes the government's desperate struggle to stabilize the chaotic situation and argues that Jeongeum's unique abilities could be a crucial turning point in their efforts. Jeongeum listens patiently, then politely but firmly declines the offer. He explains that nothing is more important to him than rescuing his family. The director expresses his disappointment, stating that he cannot provide the helicopter under these circumstances. Jeongeum accepts his decision without argument, expressing hope for a swift resolution to the crisis and wishing the director good health before turning to leave. As Jeongeum prepares to depart, the director abruptly stops him. He explains that he has another request, one that, if fulfilled, could still earn Jeongeum the helicopter. Jeongeum pauses, his curiosity piqued, and agrees to hear him out. The director explains the situation. The last known gathering of reserve awakened individuals is at Seoul Station, a location with which they still maintain stable communication. However, the path to Seoul Station is blocked by hordes of skeletons. While not individually powerful, their sheer numbers and unique ability to revive even after being killed make them a formidable obstacle. He emphasizes the need to destroy the core located at the bottom of their last right rib to permanently eliminate them. He warns Jeongeum of a particularly dangerous presence among them, a formidable skeleton knight, and stresses the importance of avoiding direct confrontation with this creature. Jeongeum, having accepted the task, states that it sounds simple, and then launches a barrage of weights at the approaching skeletons, dispatching several of the creatures with brutal efficiency. The soldiers are in shock, as the skeletons are sent flying. Upon arriving at Seoul Station, they find a group of weary soldiers huddled together, their faces a mixture of fear and relief at the sight of Jeongeum and his companions. A brief exchange takes place, confirming the soldiers' identities and their gratitude for being rescued. On their way back, Jeongeum continues his attacks and comments one of the skeleton's appearance and reaction. The skeleton, seemingly unharmed, turns to address Jeongeum. It introduces itself as Gawain, one of the 12 knights serving the Night King, and questions Jeongeum's presence in their territory. It also questions if Jeongeum is a mage. Jeongeum comments on it breaking the mana stone and how that action allowed him to understand their speech, questioning if this is another way to use mana stones. Jeongeum returns the greeting by sending more attacks. Gawain raises its sword, its posture shifting to a more aggressive stance. The weight hurtles towards Gawain, who deflects it with his shield. The impact creates a shower of sparks as the metal grinds against metal. Yongsu watches in disbelief, expressing concern, as Gawain slices through the weight, cleaving it in two with a single, powerful swing of its sword, charging towards the group. Jeongeum, realizing his regular attacks are ineffective, activates tracking delivery, spending 50 mana stones. A glowing target appears on Gawain's chest in Jeongeum's vision. He commands PX to fire, aiming for the chest. Four weights, one after another, streak towards the targeted area, each one striking Gawain with a resounding clang. Gawain, annoyed, mocks Jeongeum for his repetitive tactics and easily dodges the projectiles, calling him a stupid mage. Jeongeum then launches another attack, a bowling ball this time, striking Gawain on his head. Gawain, momentarily stunned, curses in surprise, admitting he let his guard down. He stumbles forward, his movements momentarily uncoordinated. Giangium seizes the opportunity, launching another barrage. This time, the bowling balls strike Gawain from multiple angles, hitting his head, crown, back, and sides. The relentless assault overwhelms Gawain's defenses. Yongsu asks what Giangium said at the end, and Giangium replies that he instructed PX to autoship in that order. He comments on his own amazement at the skeleton's speech ability, and then he is relieved that physical impacts still work. Yongsu expresses his gratitude to Giangium for saving him. Giangium, however, remains cautious, stating that they're not out of danger yet. He explains that the skeleton knight, likely due to its armor, is far tougher than a giant wyvern, and its sword and shield make it even more dangerous. Gawain recovers from the barrage, pieces of his armor breaking off, and angrily yells at Giangium. Giangium instructs Yongsu to send the others away, while Gawain is still disoriented. Gawain's armor continues to crumble, revealing more and more of its skeletal form beneath. He curses Giangium. Giangium observes the damage, wondering if it's a sign of weakness. He then commands PX to ship the disc pillars to hit Gawain simultaneously from all sides. 4 pillars of weights emerge from different portals, converging on Gawain in a synchronized attack. The impact sends shockwaves rippling through the ground, and Gawain is enveloped in a cloud of dust and debris. As the dust settles, Gawain's armor is shattered, and its skeletal form is heavily damaged. It acknowledges Giangium's strength, but vows that this is not the end, proclaiming that they do not die, even in death. Gawain declares its allegiance to the Night King and collapses. Giangium receives 2 large mana stone fragments and a reinforcement stone. Yongsu and the others are awestruck by Giangium's victory, marveling at his ability to defeat a creature that had withstood tank shells. Upon their return to the base, the director expresses his disapproval, reminding Giangium of his instructions to retreat if he encountered a skeleton knight. He acknowledges Giangium's success, but declares it won't do. The director invites both Giangium and Yongsu to join them, suggesting they reconsider their earlier refusal. He proposes discussing the matter further after Giangium has rescued his family, emphasizing the value they place on Giangium as a potential ally. He offers to guide them to the helicopter. Giangium, as he follows the director, reflects on the pressure of their expectations, admitting he barely managed to defeat the skeleton knight and that he wouldn't have stood a chance against multiple enemies of similar strength. He then mentions the real problem. There are at least 11 more knights like Gawain. He ponders Gawain's cryptic words about not dying, even in death, and speculates about the Night King's even greater power. He also thinks about the ineffectiveness of high-caliber rounds compared to the bowling ball strikes, questioning the physics of the situation. He dismisses it, reminding himself that monsters defy logic anyway. The director informs Giangium of high walls rising up in Yulgiro. He explains the military's failed attempt to investigate the walls, their reconnaissance unit having lost contact. However, aerial surveillance has confirmed that people are still active within the walled area, suggesting both civilians and the missing troops are still alive. He assures Giangium that his family is likely safe. Giangium, though grateful for the reassurance, admits he wasn't truly worried, confident in his sister's ability to handle herself even against monsters. The director reveals a new development. The upper parts of the walls are curving inwards, as if forming a roof. He's unsure if it will close completely, expressing relief that they could provide the helicopter before such an event. The director leads Giangium and Yongsu towards a helipad, where a helicopter awaits. Giangium questions the suitability of the somewhat outdated helicopter, but the director clarifies that Giangium's helicopter is a different one. He points towards a sleek, modern military helicopter, clearly a high-performance machine. Yongsu laughs in excitement. Giangium expresses his gratitude for the Black Hawk helicopter. The director replies that he wasn't joking, and that even a 3-star general would hesitate to lend one out. Yongsu says he is touched, and that he is excited to fly it, and the director seems surprised that he has flown a helicopter before. Yongsu admits that it is his first time, but reveals his best driver ability, which allows him to expertly handle any vehicle he can drive or ride. A notification appears, indicating that he's discovered a new vehicle/piloting method, helicopter, and can unlock the skill for 50 magic stones. Yongsu explains that his ability isn't about leveling up, but registering new vehicle types. The director leads Yongsu to a pile of magic stones, a gift from the military. The director explains it's a token of their gratitude and thanks them for their service. Yongsu is surprised by the amount, noting he only needs 50 for the helicopter skill. Jeongeum says he can use the rest. Yongsu uses the stones to enhance his helicopter piloting skills, and a notification confirms the upgrade. He excitedly announces that he's ready to go. Jeongeum agrees, but comments on Yongsu's intense expression, suggesting they take things slow. Yongsu, his eyes gleaming with excitement, refuses. Jeongeum sighs and tells him he'll let him know when it's time to leave. While waiting, Jeongeum checks his inventory, noting 2 large magic stones, equivalent to 200 regular stones, and an enhancement stone D. He's surprised by the number of magic stones he's collected, realizing they came from the skeletons he defeated during the rescue mission. He uses 1,000 magic stones to level up his subspace, noting that he can still use his abilities during the upgrade. He then considers the enhancement stone. Jeongeum recalls the message he received when he obtained the stone. It has the fire property and can be used to imbue objects with specific attributes, like penetration or ignition. He ponders which item to enhance, then decides on the bowling ball, recalling its effectiveness against the skeleton knight. He enhances the bowling ball, giving it the fire attribute. The system prompts him to enter a description for the newly enhanced bowling ball, but he ignores this and proceeds to register the new item. Yongsu calls out to Jeongeum, telling him they are ready to take off. As they start taking off, Jeongeum receives notifications of his subspace leveling up, granting new unlockable and enhanceable items, including the ability to retrieve people registered in the subspace and temporarily increasing shipping size limits. Meanwhile, outside the subspace, the director muses that Jeongeum will likely reconsider their offer to join the military after rescuing his family. He comments on Yongsu and Jeongeum's expressions as they take off and hopes that he hasn't made a mistake. Jeongeum considers the limitations of his subspace ability, specifically its single-target storage capacity. He acknowledges his effective use of larger structures like the logistics center and military base, but laments the inability to store unregistered items easily. He then discovers the category item registration feature, which allows him to register external objects fitting the categories logistics center or military base. Noticing the Black Hawk falls under the military base category, he registers it for 107 magic stones. Yongsu and Jeongeum return unexpectedly. The captain wonders what happened and if there's a problem with the helicopter. Jeongeum retrieves 2 brand new helicopters from his subspace, dropping them on the roof, confusing the director. Before taking off again, the scene cuts to the Night King in his castle. He ponders the low entry permit level for Earth and why a high-tier being like him would bother coming here, accepting a tier reduction and encroaching on his territory. He questions the wizard's arrogance. Another floating skeleton head tells him what Gawain said about trying to talk to the wizard but being attacked immediately, proving the mage was very dangerous. The Night King receives a report about humans entering the castle. He dismisses them as more food for Camelot and orders them ignored, as the roof will soon be closing. A knight named Lancelot offers to behead the wizard, but the king decides to prioritize the harvest, stating they can deal with the wizard later. He notes that while Gawain's death is a shame, they can always get more enhancement stones. Yongsu informs Jeongeum they're nearing his specified location, but landing is difficult due to a skeleton knight fighting another monster. Jeongeum identifies the other combatant, effortlessly deflecting the skeleton knight's attacks. Jeongeum is shocked to realize that his other sister is fighting the skeleton knight. His sister, notes the futility of her attacks, wondering why the creature won't die, despite the clear impact of her blows.